Welcome back. As I said previously, script activity is good if you are running a quick script. But it is better to keep transformation logic and stored procedures for ease of testing and maintenance as well as reusability. You will see the benefits of reusability later down this section of the course as well. So in this lesson, I'll show you how to use a stored procedure activity instead of the script activity. First, we'll create the stored procedure in the table a serverless SQL pool, and then replace the script activity with the stored procedure activity in the pipeline. Let's get started with creating this stored procedure. Here we are in the Synapse Studio. Let me go over to the Developer Hub and turn the script, which is a 6_create silver taxi zone, into a stored procedure. So to do that, I'm going to click on the three dots here, which is a context menu, to action and then clone. So we've got a clone of the script, and I'm going to call this as 3_create silver taxi zone. So that name should be good enough, and I'm going to move it into this folder. So we're keeping all the stored procedures in one place, and let's just make the changes to turn this into a stored procedure. So that will be the create or alter stored procedure and then the name of this stored procedure. And we want to have the begin and end block. And within that we will have these statements. So within a beginning and an end block, we can't have go. So I'm going to just replace that with the semicolon, and I'm going to do the end here. And we can get rid of this select statement because we just create in this stored procedure here. And that should let us create this stored procedure. So let me execute it and make sure there are no errors. And as you can see, this stored procedure has now been created as well. Let's now try and use this stored procedure in our pipeline rather than the script. So let me go over to the Integrate Hub. And instead of changing this pipeline, I'm going to clone this. So I've got one pipeline with a script and another one with a stored procedure. And for my learning, I can go back and look at that. You may want to do the same thing. I've used the script activity previously. So I'm going to just clone this one, and I'm going to give it a slightly different name. So I've just added the suffix as USP for user-defined stored procedure. And let me go back to this one. So this is the pipeline where we're going to delete the script, and instead we're going to use the stored procedure activity again in order to find the stored procedure activity. You do a search within the activity and you can find as you can see, there are two different stored procedure activities, one under Synapse and called SQL Pool Stored Procedure Activity, and another one under General and it's called Simply Stored Procedure Activity. As we're working on Synapse, you might be tempted to use the SQL Stored Procedure Activity, but unfortunately, at the time of recording this activity, only related to dedicated SQL pools, and it doesn't work with the serverless SQL pool. So we'll have to use the stored procedure activity here, and that's what we are going to do. So let me bring that into our pipeline. And just to make some space, I'm going to get rid of the Properties tab here, and I'm going to give the activity a meaningful name. So that would be Create Silver Taxi Zone, and let's go to the Settings tab and pick the linked service. So let me pick the link service, which is the one we created a serverless SQL pool service. And let's pick the stored procedure name. So the one we want is the Silver USP Silver Taxi Zone. So let's pick that one, and that's everything. So we've done what we needed to do. So what will happen is when this stored procedure activity executes, it's going to execute that stored procedure, and that should clear the table for us. So let me link the two so that actually the stored procedure activity executes after the delete activity. And I think we've completed the pipeline now, so let's debug this. So the stored procedure activity has now successfully completed. Let me look at the outputs here, and as you can see, took about 5 seconds to execute, and there isn't much more information because it's within the stored procedure. If you want any of that information, you'll have to push that out itself. So let me go over to the Data Hub and make sure that the data is there. So that would be under Linked and NYC Taxi Data and Taxi Zone. Should have the data. So I can see we've got the data. So that's how you can create a stored procedure activity. This gives us a lot more flexibility because stored procedures can accept parameters. We can send in parameters and things like that, which we'll look at in the next session. But before we finish this session, let's click on Publish. Let me click Publish. And that's being published now. So we are done with this session. See you in the next session.